Head of Behavioural Strategy at BAD. What that means in terms of the behavioural strategy team and offering of what we do is that we help our clients when we're engaged on any topic, whether it's sustainability and employee behaviours, AI-based tool adoption, allyship for leaders, whatever it may be, wherever there's a human in the middle. We help them kind of characterize what better outcomes that they're kind of looking to achieve through their work, and what does that look like in terms of behaviours of employees, and really importantly starting with that. And then doing behavioural analysis using evidence-based frameworks to help them kind of target their interventions and take that wider lens of kind of what drives behaviour beyond just knowledge and skills, thinking about social context, motivation, and so on, and all of the other factors that we know are kind of really important in behaviour change. So that's what the behavioural strategists and behavioural research team are doing. So the individuals in that mix bring, a background in behavioural science or organisational psychology. So my background is, I actually went back to university and did a master's of organisational psychology. I actually started, 25 years ago. My undergraduate was in biochemistry. So I've come, quite a long way in that, but always that what makes human beings tick has always kind of fascinated me. And have always worked in kind of learning and development, but increasingly getting more interested in terms of where behavioral science and kind of applied psychology can offer additional kind of strategies to clients beyond training, knowledge and skills, and the increasing amount of evidence that shows that actually it's the working context and what's happening around people that is really super influential, even more so than actually what you could train them to be able to do. So that's what we're bringing to the table. We have folks who've done UCL Warwick kind of training in behavioural science, and also leadership psychologists. So people who've got backgrounds in anthropology. So a really diverse mix of perspectives that we think really offers a really valuable lens to our clients, in combination with obviously the brilliant team that we have in creative learning design, software engineering, and so on. So yeah, that's what we're about.
Laura, there seems to be a gap between organisational desire and actual employee uptake when it comes to AI adoption in large-scale organisations. What do you think we're seeing at the moment?
So I think if you spend more than a hot minute on kind of LinkedIn these days and you wanted to correlate the amount of posting about AI with, actual organisational uptake, I think you'd be forgiven for thinking that like nearly everybody's outsourcing all or most of their role to AI. But if you look at the sort of conversations that are happening in that space, particularly in learning development and change and transformation professionals, I think what we're really seeing that's important to our clients is almost a professional consensus and an echo chamber of professional consensus, in that obviously there's a huge amount of anticipation, curiosity and interest in the impact of AI in its kind of broadest sense, but also that there's a real kind of inconsistency in terms of organizational readiness. And actually, what we're seeing is that, adoption rates and kind of approaches really vary. And a lot of our clients are struggling to get to grips with the basics. And so that shows up in data as well, actually, this kind of gap between appetite and everybody thinking, gosh, it's kind of completely taking over everyone's roles, but actually the reality of what's happening. So for example, Gallup, have published some data, in the US, for example, 60% of leaders don't feel that their organizations are actually ready to adopt AI. In Europe, 93% of the FTSE 500 CHROs indicated that they have, rolled out AI-based tools for their employees to use, but actually only a third of employees are actually engaging with them. So there is what we call that sort of intention action gap there. And so, there are many reasons that could be to explain that, is it that organizations are relying on those more kind of traditional change methodologies, the field of dreams kind of approach, which is if we build it, then people will come and they'll just use it, and that's what will happen. But we know that will fail because it's not taking into account those kind of wider human factors as to why somebody would choose to use a tool like that in their workflow. Or is it actually that because there is still a lot of concern and worry, particularly around responsible and ethical AI use and the safety concerns of employees engaging with AI-based tools at the moment, that there's a lot of fast followers, so waiting to learn the lessons from early adoption. And that's coming through in some of the kind of discourse and discussions that you're seeing, this kind of wait and see approach as well. So the reality is that, and what we're seeing is that, a number of our clients, and perhaps most organizations, are starting out on their journey in terms of wide-scale adoption efforts within their employee base.
So, Laura, what are the barriers that can impede the drive towards AI adoption, in your opinion?
So when we think about barriers, we're also thinking about enablers. So these are, categorized as the drivers of behavior. And obviously we know that, know-how and skill are key as capability drivers of AI use. So understanding how to prompt, for example, that's obviously quite a key thing. But actually, if you look at the wider lens that we look through in terms of understanding why people do the things that they do at work or don't do, we know that there are research is indicating quite a lot of different factors. So, the extent to which somebody kind of trusts in the output, trusts in AI at all, or believes in that. We know that generally speaking, society is kind of warming up to AI, and there's some kind of, interesting research around that at the moment. But thinking about, the context support that they're receiving, the authenticity of kind of endorse their positivity kind of levels, their ethical stance, and even things like, people's beliefs and concerns around sustainability issues when it comes to AI, human labor concerns. These are all kind of interesting perspectives and a myriad of perspectives that people unconsciously or consciously bring to whether they're evaluating using it or not. And some of the things we've been looking at, particularly around motivation. So, for example, Marilyn Gagne, who is a very well-respected researcher in the future of work and what makes work motivational and meaningful, published a paper in 2022 in Nature Reviews Psychology, and in that she was kind of talking about the impact of bringing AI closer into people's work lives and the implications of that for how people find work motivational and meaningful, and the elements of that. So that is that people need to feel a sense of control and autonomy over the tasks that they're doing at work. They need to feel a sense of mastery and that they're getting good at something. And also that sense of human kind of connection and purpose. These are the so-called kind of psychological needs that human beings have, and why work is so important to people, because it has really the opportunity to satisfy those needs. Or if people feel that their autonomy, competence, and that sense of connection and purpose is threatened, also has the impact to kind of deteriorate that. And that has, an impact on kind of motivation and well-being. And similarly for their identity as well, research is indicating the extent to which somebody kind of conceives of technology as part of their sense of self will predict whether or not they're more likely to kind of adopt AI. So, for example, if you take the legal profession and a junior lawyer or a newly qualified lawyer, if they're used to doing their own research, and in fact, they feel that's how they've gained skill, that's how they've gained competence, and they're being asked increasingly to use AI-based tools, it's not framed in the right way. They might feel, well, how am I going to develop my skill? How am I going to progress? So those are the sorts of considerations and those sort of human factors that we think about when we're sort of looking at, okay, what will it take to help someone adopt or adapt their workplace approach to help them continue to feel motivated and a thriving kind of workplace with AI now almost like as a colleague in the mix and increasingly part of teams.
I was just going to say, just listening to what you just said,
Yeah.
do you think a lot of it is to do just with basic trust of AI and
Yes.
people not necessarily knowing whether they can trust it or not at this stage?
Yeah, and actually, there's a lot of research that indicates trust is a unique factor for AI adoption beyond any other type of technology that people are asked to be able to, to work with. And so there's quite a lot of interesting research in that around the kind of complexity of trust. You have to trust it to use it, but also you can't trust it too much. There's kind of a bit of a double-edged sword there that kind of adds a bit of complexity into the mix there with AI, but it is an absolutely key factor when it comes to successful AI adoption programs.
What sort of approach do you think can help organisations drive AI adoption successfully amongst their employees?
So I think where we've been starting our engagements with our clients around this topic is starting with defining the positive and beneficial behavior change that they want to see within their organization. So that for many clients starts with using the tools. We often get briefs. We just want them to start using the tools and having hands-on experience. And there's absolutely no doubt that that is quite key because it, helps people understand how to work with AI effectively, overcomes that sort of first fear of engaging with something new. Actually, though, what we've found is that we also, need to help our clients see that that behavior doesn't occur in a vacuum. And there are what we call, if that's the moment of truth, if you like, the using of the tool, there are moments that matter leading up to that moments of truth and moments that matter after that moment of truth that we also need to think about. So in the lead up to using the tool, for example, if a project team is using it on a client piece of work, then the client needs to understand in the lead up to that, that the team are using it, what the value is, the team are talking about the value of AI within their work, maybe contractual kind of issues are dealt with. So there's many behavior kind of aspects that need to be put into place to create the conditions for use, those behavioral conditions. And then similarly, after someone's had a go, that sense of, well, what happens if I mess up, if it doesn't give me the output I want. We found in some of our clients that, that might not be looked on favorably, so it's that sense of experimentation, psychological safety, sharing lessons learned to create that sort of resilience and sustained use. And then also thinking about, sharing those lessons learned, sharing those valuable kind of insights, as well as the gains that are being made with kind of wider team members to create it, this is what we're doing and you can learn from us. That then encourages that sort of virtuous circle to happen again. So encouraging other teams to use it. So that's something that we've been doing, is helping our clients move from what is a kind of vicious cycle where there's too much focus on just using the tool and not enough focus on those moments that matter leading up to and after, to create that sort of sustained use, thinking about processes and the wider context in which people are actually thinking about actually using, applying their learnings, and then learning from those experiments and first failures and first endeavors, if that makes sense. So that's something that, we really kind of importantly consider, as well as kind of then doing the behavioral analysis and looking at those wider drivers like motivation, like trust, and what is unique about the organization that we might need to focus in a little bit more around. So for example, in one of our client organizations, we had to think quite a lot about personal reputation and the risk reward profile of using an AI tool when actually my knowledge is my power, and why should I contribute my knowledge to this? So thinking about that as a specific intervention point to promote sustained adaptation of how those teams are working and integrating AI into that.
What sort of model or framework is BAD using to help organisations with this?
Yeah, so we've been doing quite a lot in various different guises of work, from initial kind of awareness and early use to, kind of more in-depth work around behavioral kind of change when it comes to AI use. And that has meant we're spending quite a lot of time in the literature and, reading lots of papers, and researching our client organizations. So in that, we've developed what we call the kind of TUNE framework. And these are the sort of a summation, if you like, of the key behavioral drivers when it comes to AI adoption that is coming out from the literature. So TUNE stands for trusted, useful, normalized, and easy. And so these are the kind of things for our clients to think about that they almost kind of need to tick the boxes around to encourage human beings to integrate AI into their working patterns. So trust means that there's kind of functional trust, so that an employee can trust the output, that it's it's of a quality and accurate. Institutional level trust, which means that there are appropriate, responsible kind of policies and safety kind of assurances for use, and then interestingly for technology, human-like trust. So has it got my best interest at mind? Does it have good intentions? So trust is quite a complex kind of construct, if you like, to think about all of those factors. And also we see that it has this double-edged sword. So you can't trust at the moment AI too much because it's prone to hallucinations. So actually critical thinking and remaining objective and able to evaluate the output is really quite key. And in fact, research is also backing this up, that critical thinking is one of the first things to go if you're over-relying on, if you're trusting it too much, if you like. So that's something key. Useful, will this make me better at my job? And that's not just more efficient. This is actually thinking about career opportunities, making those visible to people, thinking about those wider affordances of usefulness to somebody. Is this going to help me get that next better job that I want to? So thinking about career pathways, for example, how are organizations highlighting the levels of skills, or where AI is showing up from that point of view is another thing to kind of think about as an example. Normalize means, we're social beasts. And so we're more likely to do, and that goes for any area of our life, what we see others doing, particularly those who we kind of respect, admire, and trust. So thinking about making that more visible in terms of AI use, more visible to people. So do my clients expect me to use this? Are they encouraging me to use it? My peers around me, my leadership. And also, if you think about professional norms, the legal profession is a great example of a profession where technology use was not normalized in the past. And so actually resetting those occupational norms is really quite key, because people look for those signals when they are consciously or unconsciously deciding whether or not to do something. And similarly for easy, it's not just, is the tool itself easy to use? Am I receiving kind of default prompts or whatever it might be? Also thinking about, okay, is it feeling risky for me to use this? Am I going to be somehow, chastised, but, am I going to experience some negative consequence if I have a go and I fail at this, for example? That's not going to create a sense of easiness, or that this is the most obvious choice for me to decide to use in my day-to-day work. So I would say that trust is a unique factor, and that the research is indicating when it comes to AI. Usefulness, normative, easy are key factors anyway when it comes to technology adoption. So that's how we've developed Tune.
So finally, Laura, can you provide a cool example of where we've helped with AI adoption for one of our clients?
Yeah. So we were engaged last year to help one of our clients in professional services in developing their change agent program for AI adoption. And a really interesting challenge, because change agents, are quite often used by clients when it comes to kind of rolling out new things. And there's really good kind of, behavioral science reasons for that. If we look about important messengers, for example, we're really influenced by people we respect, admire, and trust. And so there's good reason, why change agents can play a valuable role in signaling desired behaviors. And also, particularly in this case where adoption levels are low, there's also something called trending minority norms, which means that how do you encourage adoption when not many other people are using it? But actually, you can kind of cleverly use influential groups, small influential groups, and show how use is trending amongst these groups to really signal that this is a desired kind of thing to do. So again, change agents are really key to that. So what we really helped our client do was think behaviorally, thinking about those moments that matter leading up to applied use. And making that very clear and explicit to the change agents, that they're not just focused on those kind of helping people use the tool itself. It's creating the conditions for sustained use and helping them think almost like behavioral scientists in that regard, but equipping them with ways in which that they could help tackle behavioral barriers that were key for this particular organization. Quite often what we find with change agents, and I think our client was experiencing this as well, is that change agents can often be viewed at some point a bit skeptically. They're sort of getting rolled out with the big jazz hands, and they're salespeople almost for whatever it is, that they're there and they're really passionate about and championing. And actually what we kind of help them kind of reframe is that change agents are there to address barriers and problem solve. And so if we think about, tune, for example, we help design the change agent program to tackle tune. So to build trust, to create an idea of usefulness, to promote normative use, and to help create the conditions for ease of use as well. So for example, in trust, operating at a one-to-one level, working with a change agent, having a conversation with a senior leader, for example, to show and walk them through the affordances of their AI tools that they wanted to use, but expose its limitations. That's really important in trust building. It's not just selling the benefits. It's saying, we're on a journey. This is, what the tool is really good at. This is what we're developing, and helping them kind of walk alongside them in that regard in terms of building trust. And then also in that kind of critical thinking aspect as well. So for example, running events at a group level on thinking like behavioral scientists and friction finding, for example, in processes, or running events on critical thinking and how to evaluate outputs of AI. So targeting the change agents very much behaviorally and very much tackling the barriers or enablers of AI adoption, rather than just letting them free flow and speak about the benefits, when actually there's probably quite a lot of skeptical folks out there within the organization, and there's good reason for that, as we've spoken about. So helping them understand and appreciate that, and then giving them those sort of behavioral tools that they could use within their own change agency programs, within their own regions, departments, or whatever it might be.
Got a follow-up question. It was just, so what were those tools that we designed for them that they could use moving forward?
So it was initially that we designed a program for the change agents themselves, in which they were obviously given, lots of experience in using those tools. But then we also developed a behaviour change session for them, in which they were able to kind of design their change agent program, grounded in an understanding of adoption and tune itself. So they were able to think about where their own kind of region or department was in their journey, and think about, okay, what is it that I need to do at a one-to-one level, or what is it that I need to be doing at kind of a group level that would help address what I believe to be the real barriers within my particular area, so that they were given an opportunity to develop a campaign not just around messaging and selling the benefits, but actually grounded in behavioral thinking. And then we furnish them, with tools to be able to kind of go and roll out those sessions themselves. And in an ongoing manner, kind of the client team is kind of continuing to think at that level as well, both in terms of, the change journey that they're on, but also the behavioral barriers and how can they design interventions and tools that are specifically designed to tackling those barriers within the particular regions where they vary across the globe in terms of AI adoption, meaning that a one size fits all approach was not going to work for them.